weather the storm better than others? When I give this presentation in person, oftentimes people will say, well, sure, I mean, a little extra preparation, maybe some good planning, or maybe they just even had better resources available when they were building it. And I would agree with those. I mean, it certainly makes sense. You can go to the next slide, please. Do you ever wonder why some people weather their personal storms better than others? It's resilience. You see, humans are not necessarily built naturally with the naturally occurring resilience that the redwoods have. Sometimes we're more like the house, where we need a little extra planning or good preparation or just access to better resources. The good news is that we can build our resilience. So even if it's not naturally occurring to you, developing your resilience is something that you can do. And we're going to talk about that today. We're going to discuss resilience, what it is, how it shows up. We'll walk through a couple of examples. And then, as I mentioned before, when I talked about the handout, you're going to have the opportunity to chart your personal resilience. And then we're going to offer a couple of ideas for things that you might want to think about including in your day-to-day if there are areas that you want to focus on. So with that, if you want to go to the next slide. I love this quote. It's from Mel Robbins, and she says, "You grow through what you go through." And this quote kind of reminds us of the positives that are associated with the storms. Resilience is about being able to bend without breaking, to be able to bounce back and even make the adversity part of your story. Now, most personal growth occurs through adversity. You think about it, if you've had everything handed to you and you've never had to work hard for anything, then you really don't develop much. When you really have to work at something, when you really have to grind away to make it happen, whether it's a project or even a classroom assignment, it just means more when you have accomplished it. And you probably learned a little bit more along the way, too. Next slide. Resilience will determine who succeeds and who fails. Resilience is a common thread between successful entrepreneurs and Olympic athletes. And if you think about it, that makes sense because they're both chasing a dream and they're not going to let anybody get in the way of their dream. Quite simply, they just refuse to give up. They certainly get knocked down enough, but they also know how to get back up on their feet again. More than education, more than experience, more than training, a person's level of resilience will determine who succeeds and who fails. Next slide. Resilience is a life skill that helps us to be comfortable with the unexpected because we know life's messy. We created this workshop because sometimes just having some tools at hand can help us to cope with life's messiness. Next slide. Probably the largest study completed to date on resilience was conducted by the Resilience Institute. They studied over 26,000 individuals across 5 continents. It took them 6 years to complete the study, and in the end, they had over 1 million data points. And they mapped people on their level of resilience, so high or low. If you were low, they gave you some tools to help increase your level of resilience. And what they found was whether it was naturally occurring or it was something that you had to work at, people with higher levels of resilience tended to show more courage in times of uncertainty. People with higher levels of resilience also would re-engage quicker after a setback. And they typically had more meaningful connections to others. They also found that they tended to be more creative in a volatile and uncertain world. And we're going to drop a pin in that one for just a minute. We'll come back to that. In general, people with higher levels of resilience just had better coping skills in turbulent times. Next slide. But what was Equally interesting to me were the longer term findings. People with higher levels of resilience were just more satisfied in life. They tended to have better sleep habits, greater impulse control, and an increased awareness of their own health and fitness. If you want to go to the next slide, please. So, we've talked a little bit about what resilience is and why it's important. But let's talk about how resilience shows up. Go to the next slide, please. I'm going to show you a couple of examples. We'll start looking at one that is a personal example, and then the next one will be more of a team example. So if you could click to the next one, please. You might remember this individual. Her name is Bethany Hamilton. She's a teen surfer phenom. At the age of 13, she was surfing off of the coast of Hawaii and was attacked by a 15-foot shark. As you can see, it bit her left arm off. Can you imagine? I mean, that is a life-changing event, regardless of your age. But she didn't let it stop her. In fact, she started surfing again just 4 weeks later. She said, well, the shark didn't take her passion for surfing, and she still wanted to be a professional surfer. So she spent countless hours training. She needed to understand how her new body was going to react to the board and to the waves. She started competing at a pro level and winning. She even beat out a 6-time world champ, which nobody expected. The 2019 documentary titled Unstoppable outlines her journey and what an inspiration she is to so many people who are dealing with their own personal adversity. There's a scene where she says, I didn't need easy, I just needed possible. Bethany Hamilton is truly a resilient individual. Next slide, please. And while bouncing back is a choice, it might be easier for some than others. If you had a particularly resilient parent or role model in your life when you were growing up, you may have unknowingly observed that behavior, and often we mimic what we observe. So while there is a little bit of genetics involved, resilience is something that can be learned. So researcher Diane Coutu talks about how resilience shows up with individuals, and she says that they have a staunch acceptance of reality, strong values, and a belief that life is meaningful, and they don't play the victim. And I think that Bethany's I didn't need easy, I just needed possible, I think that pretty much underscores her level of resilience. So if you could go to the next slide, please. Bethany was certainly a person, an example of resilience at a personal level, but I'd like to take you through a team example as well. So if you want to just go ahead and pop the next 3 up, 1, 2, 3, that would be great. Thank you. So you might remember the Apollo 13 mission. Some of you might remember the movie version. Some of you might not remember it at all, so I'll give you a quick refresher. The year is 1970, and the United States is feeling pretty good about its ability to get to the moon and back. And the 3 astronauts that you see in the upper left-hand corner, they're all smiles because it's their turn for a lunar landing, so they're ready to go. But just 2 days into their mission, there was an explosion on their service module. Now, up in space, these 3 astronauts don't know what's happened. If you look to the right, you see Gene Kranz. This is the mission control director in Houston. They have to rely on his team to try and figure out what happened. So Gene's having his team gather all the information, analyze the data, and they realize that it was an oxygen tank, and these guys are getting gravely low on oxygen now. So they have scrubbed the lunar landing. Now, the most important part of the mission is just survival. They've got to find a way to get oxygen to these astronauts and then get that spaceship turned around and landed back on Earth. So there's the team decides that the way that they're going to do it is they're going to teach them how to build an air filter from afar. But they don't have a lot to work with. In fact, the only thing they have to work with are the items that they have in that lunar module with them. So if you've ever been to like the Space Museum, you know that those capsules aren't very big and there's not a lot of extra stuff. But there's a great scene in the movie where this guy walks in and he dumps these two big boxes of stuff out on the table, as you see there on that bottom middle picture. He dumps them out on the table and he says, okay, we've got to figure out a way to get this square peg into this round hole using only this stuff on the table. And the next line you hear are the guys off camera saying, all right, let's do this. Let's get some coffee going. Let's build an air filter. This is team resilience. They are ready to just jump in and do whatever is needed to make it work. They were the MacGyvers before there was a MacGyver. This is team resilience at its finest. Next slide, please. So what does that look like? Well, these guys worked the problem. Resilient teams spend almost no time, especially in emergencies, getting upset about what's been lost or feeling distressed or placing blame when things have gone badly. And they have an uncanny ability to improvise. Now, this ties back to, remember I said, let's drop a pin and we're going to carry that forward. That's what we're talking about here. Your ability to improvise when you need to, or be able to pivot as opposed to just kind of getting stuck. That's what these guys did. Hey, let's gather all this stuff that they have access to and figure out a way to teach them how to build an air filter from afar. No small feat. So thinking about your own teams, this might have been something that you've had to do. Maybe you've had to learn a new way to work together remotely as a result of the pandemic. I don't know about you. My group is doing it, and it's not perfect, but we're making it work. So you do what you can to try and get by, even if it's not ideal. So, but let's admit, at least for me, my days of being an astronaut are over, and the odds of me being bitten by a shark are probably pretty slim. These are extreme cases, but we use them to kind of illustrate the point. But let's be clear, resilience is just as much about the day-to-day tests that we're all experiencing. Anything from spilling coffee on your planner to running late for a meeting that you're in charge of, or even just having a string of bad days all in one week. So these are the types of day-to-day adversities that we can't really predict, but we can probably expect. So our hope is by equipping you with tools to help you navigate the day-to-day, you'll be more prepared should you ever encounter one of the larger ones. So next slide, please. Finally, resilient people, oh, one more, please. Thank you. Resilient people look for the positive path, and they adopt the adversity as part of the story that they tell themselves and others. The story we use here is the example where two people have been working at a company for about the same amount of time, and they're both up for the same promotion. But a third person comes in and gets the job. Now, I've seen this play out in my career a few times, as I'm sure many of you have as well. And there's usually a couple of different reactions to it. So the first person's reaction might be, life's not fair, and all the complaining that they can muster up. And pretty much they'll complain to anybody that will listen to them for weeks. The resilient person might choose to reframe and ask, what can I do now to be more prepared for the next promotion when it comes around? And they might even say something when asked about it. They might say, yeah, I'll admit, I was really disappointed when I didn't get that job. But now I'm realizing I might not have been the best candidate. So I'm taking this time to understand more about our business, to make more networking connections, and do what I can to be more prepared for the next set of promotions. So we can make ourselves more resilient simply by how we think about things. Next slide. So now it's time to focus on you. This is when I would like for you to get your handout ready. Again, it's an interactive one. If you have two screens, you can just go ahead and work right there on the screen. If not, you can print it or just get a piece of paper and a pencil. That's fine too. You're going to use this handout to chart your responses and understand your personal resilience based on 7 characteristics that we found important in our research. And then in a few minutes, we'll identify some tools for areas of personal development. Next slide. The handout will look something like this, and we're going to do this together, so don't get too far ahead of me if you can. I'll describe the section so we're all kind of grounded in what the topic is, and then you're going to be asked to score yourself on each of the 3 statements, and you're going to use the scale 0 to 3. So you're going to put your total in the box, and if you could go to the next slide, please. There you go. So in this particular example, I scored myself a 2, a 1, a 1, so my total is a 4. Next slide. And you can color in the color wheel if you would like. If not, no worries. It's just kind of keeping track of those totals. Before we start, just a couple of quick things. First off, there's no right or wrong answers, and you'll likely have some areas that you're stronger in than others, and that's natural. Building resilience is a process. This is simply a way to consider your own personal characteristics for dealing with adversity today. Now, I will say I would encourage you to dig deep. It takes courage to be humble enough to answer these questions honestly. And nobody's looking, nobody's going to ask you to share your scores. This is just a conversation you're having with yourself. So it's a great time to really dig into the thoughts on your own. So with that, we're going to go ahead and get started. And as I said, I'm going to read just a couple of sentences to kind of ground us in that first topic. And then you'll be asked to answer the question. So if you can click to the next slide, please. All right. So positive connections can be thought of as people who get me. They support me in traditional and unconventional ways. Now, this might be family or friends or coworkers. Maybe it's a team that you belong to or a club that you participate in. So thinking about your positive connections, answer these 3 questions using the scale shown. And if you could click to the next slide, we'll stay here for about 10 or 15 seconds. Okay, if you want to click to the next slide, please. We're going to just keep moving through these. Realistic optimism. Now, this is not Pollyanna thinking. This is not, oh, everything's wonderful all the time. That's borderline denial, and that's not what we're talking about here. Realistic optimism means that you believe in your ability to make things happen, but you're also grounded in reality. You're aware of the challenges, and you know what action needs to be taken in order to achieve the goal. You consider the best actions to take. You can accept those things that can't be changed. A realist tries to keep emotion out of the equation. So, next slide. Score yourself on these 3. Okay, next slide, please. Self-motivation to persevere. It's easy to be motivated by a group. A little peer pressure can be good. I know I needed to keep me on my workout path, for example. But how good are you at finding motivation from within when nobody is looking or encouraging or reminding you? The word persevere is literally the Latin word for through difficulty. So for this characteristic, think about your ability to dig into your own personal motivation to work through difficulty. Next slide. Okay, moving on. The Resilience Institute study found that resilient people are fulfilled at work, sleep well, and they take care of their personal nutrition. So take a moment to answer these questions regarding your physical and brain fitness. Next slide. Okay, moving on. Ability to face fear. When was the last time you took on a challenge outside of your comfort zone? How comfortable are you with failure? Do you worry about what others think? Do you only try the things that you know that you will finish successfully and perfectly? Is it possible that reluctance to try new things or get involved in challenging projects could be limiting your personal growth? Consider these questions as you rate your ability to face fear. Next slide. Okay, moving on. Pivoting and flexibility. When somebody tells you about their new idea, are you the first one to start telling them immediately everything that's wrong with that? Or do you value the ingenuity and engage them in a discussion to hear more about the possibilities? Do you seek new ways of thinking? Do you expect to be a lifelong learner? Can you put yourself in another person's shoes to understand their perspective? Do you enter into a conversation with a long held bias about that person or topic? Next slide. Okay, and our final one, moral compass alignment. So, who are you? At your core, who are you? Are you in touch with your core beliefs and your values? Do you truly understand what drives you? You may have thought about your values if you defined your purpose or created a why statement. Do you update them often? Do you refer to them? And next slide. Okay, so how did that feel? Any surprises? Maybe sometimes? If you can click to the next slide, please. So maybe you didn't color in the chart, and that's fine. But I want to talk to you about how to read the scores that we just went through. So if you scored if you scored 7, 8, or 9, these are probably your natural strengths. These are probably the characteristics that you lean into most during times of adversity. Maybe you don't realize that. If you scored 4, 5, or 6, these characteristics might feel familiar to you, but they're probably not consistent. And 0 to 3, these are the ones that maybe you have the most opportunity for personal growth. Now, I will say that often when I give this presentation in person, I ask people, how did you score? And it's common for people to say, I learned that I'm more resilient than I thought. And I want to take a moment and say, if that's the case, good for you. We're not here to try and find fault or say that there's anything wrong with you and we need to fix you. Not at all. In fact, if you, as a result of answering those 21 questions, if you found that you're more resilient than you thought you were, congratulations, especially in this era. But also, this is a great opportunity for maybe you to coach someone else or to be a mentor to somebody who isn't quite as resilient as you are. So, as we go to this last section, think about maybe some opportunities, not only for yourself, if there's an area that you want to focus on, but maybe somebody you live with, somebody you work with, um, maybe somebody that you mentor, that maybe you want to share some of these ideas with. So, next slide, please. So, we've talked about resilience being a muscle that can be strengthened through your day to day activities. So, now that you know where your strengths and your opportunities lie, we have a couple of ideas that we can offer that maybe you could proactively strengthen your resilience muscle in any of these areas that you might want to focus on. So if you flip your page over or go to the second page of your worksheet, this is where we're going to work next. Again, piece of paper and pencil, perfectly fine, just make some notes. Um, so if you'd like to click through to the next page, please, and one more. Thank you. We're going to go through the 7 areas again, and this time we're going to offer up some suggestions. So when we think about seeking positive connections, we talked about the resilient redwoods at the very beginning of this, and I want to bring them back for just a minute because there's another aspect of their networked root system that I find really interesting in their way to support each other. So we talked about that they grow in families. When one tree in the family becomes distressed, the other trees have the ability to send it nutrients through that networked root system. I just think that's fascinating. And as humans, we need to do this too. So when we say seek your positive connections, that's what we're saying. Find your redwoods. Find people who are uplifting and support you. Disconnect from negativity whenever possible, and develop trusting relationships. You'll recognize these people. People that you develop a trusting relationship with are they're people in your corner. They're not judgmental. They ask about your success and they're genuinely happy for you when you achieve something. Um, and this is somebody that you probably want to tell your goals to. And they're also a good sounding board because they're going to tell you the truth. At the end of each one of these, we have a challenge. So if you could click one more time, please, you'll see our challenge for this one. And it is tell a trusted friend how much you value his or her support. Okay, if we could go to the next one, please. Foster a realistic optimism. We encourage you to seek out the positives in the situation and let go of the things that you can't control. You can't control traffic, you can't control the weather, so you need to just let them go. Another suggestion is to learn to quiet your inner critic. We had a woman that came and spoke to the leadership group here about a year ago, and I remember her saying, you wouldn't let anyone else talk to you that way, so why do you let your inner critic speak to you like that? And I thought, wow, she's right. So do what you can to quiet your inner critic and believe in your abilities. And if we could pop up the challenge, please. Our challenge here is to seek opportunities to make someone smile. That might be holding the door open for somebody just a little bit longer. It might be, instead of getting distressed about somebody cutting you off in traffic, flip the script. Let someone in traffic. So focus on what you can control. And the next one, exercise self-motivation and perseverance. This one is about setting goals and then also finding time to work on those goals. So sometimes we set them, but we don't really complete them. So setting not only small, but long-term, and then even stretch goals can be very helpful. But it's important that you allow yourself time to work on them. So we suggest that you put you on your calendar. In a 401k world, we'd always say, pay yourself first. This is kind of the same thing. Put yourself on your calendar before it gets cluttered up with meetings and obligations to other people. This way you have time to either work on the goal or at least check your progress toward your goal. People find it helpful to keep a journal and reflect at the end of each day. And it's important to try to learn to reward yourself and for your achievements and forgive yourself after failures. And our challenge, if you could click there, thank you. Tell others about your goal. We all know that when you tell somebody about your goal, you're more likely to complete it. So think about who you'd want to tell. Maybe that's a trusted friend. Maybe it's not social media, but think about telling someone your goal so to help motivate you. You could go to the next slide, please. We don't need to spend a lot of time on the first ones. There's so much information out there about eating healthy and the importance of exercise. And now there's a lot of information about the importance of getting a good night's rest and even taking meditation breaks throughout the day. I want to turn your attention to the last one, which is practice joyful activities. What are we talking about there? We're talking about an activity that is so engaging that you lose track of time, something that you can immerse yourself in when your brain needs a diversion. So for some people, that is exercise or a sport. It could be family time or a hobby, gardening, woodworking, painting, knitting, even binge watching a TV series, something that requires your full and undivided attention. So participating in a hobby that requires you to concentrate on it fully will help you to let go of what's ruminating in your head instead of dwelling on it endlessly. And oftentimes this mental separation from the issue at hand will help you to view the situation differently when you do come back to it. So just a quick note, the activity should be something healthy. So let's try not to do binge eating or binge drinking. But if you're not sure of an activity, you're kind of like, I don't really have a hobby. Volunteer. There is nothing better than helping somebody else whenever when you're feeling a little down yourself, because it can be extremely uplifting and fulfilling. So whatever it is that you choose, go ahead and identify your immersion activity now. If you could put up the challenge, please. So that way you have it at the ready when you need it, because you don't really want to find yourself in need of it and you're like, I wonder if I would enjoy knitting. So try and go ahead and get it established now so it's there when you need it. Next slide. Facing fear. So doing things that scares you, it can help you to not only neutralize your fear, but it also builds self-confidence and resilience. So some people have a fear of public speaking. Join Toastmasters, something like that. If you find you have difficulty getting started, start by just writing out a list of the bravest things you've ever done. Now, that doesn't have to be that you walked across hot coals or that you walked a tightrope at 300 feet. It could be something that's personally terrifying for you. Maybe it's going out to dinner by yourself or traveling to a new city by yourself. Think about the things that you have done and making a list of the times that you have been brave. This will encourage you to believe in yourself and push your own boundaries in a healthy and life-enhancing way. And also, it's kind of good to make a list of times that you failed. And I know that sounds awful to think about. Sometimes that's a really long list and it's hard to look at, but understanding that you have successfully failed in the past, meaning that you failed and then you got back up again, can be very helpful in reminding you that you can do it again. So at that time, that one thing that you did, probably that you failed at, probably seemed enormous. But a little time and space, and you start realizing, maybe I did learn a little something from that. So reflect on what you've learned and how much you've grown by looking at that list. And if you would like to pop up the challenge, please. So our suggestion is map out a plan for a fear that you want to overcome. We just have two more. I'd like to go to the next one. Practice pivoting and flexibility. Now, everyone might have scored pretty high on this one because I think we're all learning how to pivot and be a little bit more flexible in this new way of working, in this new way of living. But if you're still having a little challenge there, or somebody that you want to encourage to be a little bit more flexible or learn how to pivot, we suggest that you try to flex your mental agility by changing your perspective. So maybe in a conversation, you discuss the topic from the other person's point of view. And do you remember in debate class, I always felt like I got on the side that I really didn't believe in on the topic. But as I started doing my research, it's kind of like, wait a minute, I can understand why people feel this way. So try to take a few steps in somebody else's shoes. It'll go a long way. Also, to flex your mental agility, we suggest problem solving, puzzles and games, even the hobby that you chose. That can be something that helps you view alternatives or view possibilities from a different angle. And our challenge on this one, challenge your ingenuity by completing a task with fewer resources. For example, how would you prepare a healthy meal if you had no electricity? During the pandemic, I found myself lots of times I didn't have enough ingredients for a particular recipe and I had to improvise and things like that. Try and make note of those. And our final one, next slide, is get in tune with your moral compass, which brings us back to who you really are. Write down your values and put them in a place where you'll view them often. Sometimes we say write them out and put them on your bathroom mirror so you see them every morning. It's not enough just to see them. You need to read them. And if you really want to be effective, read them out loud every morning. This helps you to kind of lean into your values and your purpose throughout the day and be true to who you really are. It helps you to understand your purpose or your why and be authentic. And our final challenge, DJ? Hunt for the good stuff and practice gratitude daily. We just have a couple more slides. If you'd like to go to the next one, please. So we've discussed what you can do to build your resilience proactively, but what about in the moment? We wanted to offer some specific suggestions for when you get that punch in the gut, when that tornado hits of your personal tornado, your personal storm. Because as they used to say at Nationwide, life comes at you fast. So if you can go to the next slide, please. So these are some suggestions we offer in the moment. First, take a deep breath, of course. But give yourself credit for the hurdles that you've already overcome. So this is a good time to go back and read that list of fears that you've overcome, or the bravest things that you've done, or even the failures that you've survived, and gain some perspective. Step away, physically, mentally, step away. We discussed an immersion activity or a hobby. This is when you want to use it. This will help you to disconnect from the issue at hand, and often when you return to it, you have clearer thoughts and a little less emotional volatility. Reach out to your trusted friend who can help you to organize and even vet your thoughts. Often that person can help you to reframe your perspective too. Focus on the real issue. This one's crucial. It's easy to kind of lose sight of the real issue. And we talked about when somebody else got the promotion, and probably all you heard at that moment was, wow, that person's phenomenal, and you're not. You know that's not true, and you know that's not what was said, but often we get kind of caught up in those negative thoughts. Instead, take time to frame the real issue. Am I looking at jobs that I'm qualified for? Should I be taking extra skills courses so I can make myself more marketable? And do I have the skills that my company is looking for in the future? Also, look for the positives. So when you hear somebody say, hey, we've got a new reorg about ready to happen in our company, think of the possible uh, new opportunities that might be right around the corner for you. And finally, expect to succeed. Next slide. We created this workshop because change is all around us. It's happening at home, it's happening at work, it's happening in our industry. It's only going to continue to increase in intensity and speed. And so, understanding and strengthening our resilience skills proactively will help us to prepare for the unknowns that are probably right around the corner. We've covered a lot of ground today, so I'm going to leave you with this one final thought. If you could click to the next slide. We become what we do if we practice it enough. So if we act with compassion, we become compassionate. We act with courage, we become courageous. And if we make resilient choices, we become resilient. That's all we have for you today. Thank you so much. From the Nationwide Retirement Institute, I would like to say a hearty thank you so much for joining us today. Hey, thanks for flipping the slides for me. It was new and different, but it worked out just fine. Thank you. It was one less thing for me to think about. All right. Yeah, I hope the rest of your thing goes well. Bye now.
How you doing? Craziness has begun? Okay. Are the other guys logged on yet? Okay. 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 So greetings and welcome to, I believe this will be one of the first sessions of Connect at Home. We appreciate you coming and joining us today. My name is Sam Polino. I am the Regional Planning Specialist for the Atlantic Seaboard region, and I'll be leading this session, which is called Leveraging Your Regional Support Team. The Atlantic Seaboard region is made up of Pennsylvania, Maryland, and New Jersey. So I had the ability to reach out to some of my advisors and put together a panel here to kind of discuss leveraging your team, working together. And so I will introduce those guys right now. So the first team, we have Mike Malcolm and Joe Shally. They are located in New Holland, Pennsylvania, which is near Lancaster, PA. And correct me if I'm wrong, Mike, we've been working together 10 plus years now.
Since you came in, Sam.
from the beginning.
So it's been quite some time. I don't know how long it's been. You tell me.
So we're north of 10 years now, my friend.
Okay.
It's a little crazy. And then Joe, when you came in, when did you get licensed?
Ooh, 2010 maybe? 2011? 2010 it was, yeah.
Yeah. So what I thought was great with getting you guys is, Mike, we've been working together 10 years. Joe, you came in, got licensed. We started working together. So I've been able to watch you guys grow over the past 10 years, which has been great. And then our other team is a father-son team, Rob Gariano Sr. and Rob Gariano Jr. I just started working with the Northern New Jersey group about a year ago. So I've only been working with these guys for about a year, but Rob Sr., when did you get licensed and when did you start doing this business?
1987, 30
Nice.
years I'm in the business. I used to be in the corporate world and realized that was not where I wanted to be. I had an opportunity to sort of parallel the job for a short time period, realizing the opportunities were available to me. And then I went full steam, full time, and I went back.
Awesome. And then Rob, prior to this, you were trying to do a baseball career, correct?
Trying is the perfect word, I think. Yeah, so after I graduated, I had 2 years of playing professional baseball on the West Coast, and then I decided, well, I should correct myself. They decided I should probably find a different career. So working a little bit in the corporate world myself, Morgan Stanley, Lord Abbett in Jersey City, New Jersey,
Okay.
which some of the advisors might be using some of their investments throughout. I was able to build a great base, get licensed. And now this is my 6th year over here at Gariano Wealth Management with my father, and it has been tremendous.
Awesome. And it's and to let those who are watching know, you guys are full-time advisors where Mike and Joe, they have a tax practice. So it'll give us good perspective as we kind of see how we work. But most importantly, thank you 4 of you guys for joining me today. I really appreciate you taking the time. I think this will be a great conversation. So the theme of this presentation is leveraging your regional support team. And I can tell any of those who watch this session that in order for me to have success or you guys to have success with the back office, you guys have to be willing to open your door to us and start working with us and reaching out, because we do have advisors who are a little bit reluctant or they're not really sure where the support can come from. So I always tell people that if you're going to be in this position, it's definitely a two-way street. And from the time we've all been working together, it certainly has been that. But once you guys open your door and you let myself or one of my counterparts in, it is completely up to us. And the most important thing we can do is to learn your practice and know how you guys run your business, what your goals are, where you're looking to drive a year, 5, 10 years down the road. So we're all on the same pace. So once we do that and we build trust with each other, then this thing becomes a true partnership. And when it becomes a partnership, then we're entangled with everything you guys do on a daily basis. We get to have some success. We certainly have some fun doing it, but it really starts to leap off from that point. So one of the first questions I have is trust, I think, is the most important thing when you're working with us and building that relationship. So Mike and Joe, if I asked you guys, other than trust, what is one of the most important characteristics you're looking for when you're working with your support?
Well, I'll start, Joe. For me, realistic expectations. And so we need to, get our clients to get to that point and have that conversation. But how many times all of us probably sitting here and those that are watching, everybody wants, a 15, 20% return with no risk. Well, it's starting that conversation and having them believe in and know that, hey, these are your goals. This is where we want to get to. But you know, you got to be patient and let's work together to get there. But many times the expectations are, you know, not
Surely.
in line with where they want to go.
Yeah.
So that's one of the, outside of trust, that's where I want to get them.
Yeah, and let me rephrase the question a little bit. Where when you're building relationships with us, Cetera Financial Specialists, the back office,
Yeah.
what's one of the most important characteristics you're looking for from us before we come into your office? And you know, I always take it as a compliment. If you're going to open your book of business and your business to me to understand your practice, what are you guys looking for from us to help kind of really develop that partnership? Joe?
Yeah, I think one of my biggest things is responsiveness and how quick
Absolutely.
you guys are, getting back to us and helping us, get to where we need to go. When you run a small business, we don't always have the time to wait a day or 2 days to get an answer back, to go to a client and, get something done. We want it right away. And I think, since Frank came on, I think he's immediate. I mean, he's quick. I've been using him a lot lately. I have him set up with Tom, the guy we just brought on. I think responsiveness and honesty are two important.
Yeah, I mean,
virtues.
Yeah, to Joe's point, I mean, working with you, Sam, since we've done this for 10 years.
Yeah.
I know I can make a quick phone call to you,
Yeah.
and you say, hey, I'll have that email to you, and before I get back to the office, I have the information I need. So we're reaching out to help us facilitate.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, have you guys kept that business as a small business over the past 10 years, or is that thing still growing?
It's still growing. It's still growing.
That's a little inside joke. But so I'll phrase the same questions to Rob and Rob Jr. And Rob Sr., I'll ask you first. You've been in the business a long time, and you've worked with other RPSs in the past. And, what's the most important characteristic you're looking from us in order to, again, open your book of business and let us in to help us develop your practice?
Certainly understanding our business model is very helpful. How we go about promoting our business, how we go prospecting clients, our offerings, I'm sure are different. If you asked a number of advisors out there, everybody would have a different idea on how they want to develop their financial solutions. It's very, very helpful that you understand how we do our practice, how we run our practice, and how we relate to our clients solving those solutions. More importantly, and I don't want to make light of it, responsiveness is huge. When our clients contact us, they're expecting an answer literally the next second. The reality is they understand, but we can't wait days for that. We've been very, very fortunate that both yourself, Frank, and the back office have been extremely, extremely responsive. We've had a situation that every advisor is living in right now, and that has put a lot of strain on the organization. It's called COVID. I can honestly say that it has been a seamless transition to the back office support, to you and Frank, to be accessible to us, be available to us when a question is needed, when we have some concerns with the technology, with AdviceWorks, with AnnuityNet, whatever it may be. It's very, very helpful to have that immediate reaction such that we respond to our clients in a timely basis.
That's awesome. So, Rob, Junior, I'll ask you the same question. Anything you want to add to what the guys have already said?
Yeah, a little bit. I'll piggyback off of what my father mentioned, but also your experience helps. I mean, I've only been here for 6 years, which almost seems like an eternity, but it really hasn't been that long of a time, especially when, you talk about some of these other guys and how long they've been advising for. But you being able to be the eyes and the ears for us that maybe we just, don't have in the type of capacity that you have. You're speaking to advisors all over the Northeast and the country, let's be honest, because you also have those relationships with the other regional managers. So for you to go out there and bring those answers back to us, that experience back to us, that helps out tremendously. I mean, again, to take the curtain off, I mean, you just helped us over this past week with a case that we didn't exactly have the perfect solution. until you brought it to us, when I'm not here, I'm not going to pat you back this whole time, Sam. Okay.
Okay,
But,
don't worry, we're cool.
listen, I mean, you saved us a ton of time and effort and energy from the experience that you brought. Hey, I know these products. I know what might be a solution for this situation, this client's situation. So again, I'm going to say it again, just the experience that you have, being able to leverage that just saves us an enormous amount of time.
No, that's great. I appreciate that, guys. And I always say the best thing about my job is I do get to talk to numerous advisors on a daily basis, and everybody's got a different practice and a different story and a different way they're building their business. And nobody's trying to recreate the wheel in this business. We're just trying to steal each other's best ideas and then make it our own. So I'm totally with you.
Sam, if you think about it, we're aware of the financial solutions that we've used perhaps on a routine basis. And you exposing us to other financial solutions, it's created a lot more opportunities for us and for our clients.
Yeah, that's great. I appreciate that. And as a regional planning specialist, we're involved in all parts of your practice. I always kind of joke my favorite part to be a part of is the business development side, which is cases you're working on, clients you're working on, how we can build the practice. So, and again, this isn't just where I've helped you, but could you guys give any specific examples? And I'll ask Mike and Joe first, where we've had some success helping you guys close like an advisory case, an annuity case, maybe even on the protection life insurance side.
There you go. So Sam, I know you always like to see assets come over from Vanguard, so I figured I'd share one of those. No, I had a case. It was actually just this past week. Client had a pretty decent sized Roth IRA over at Vanguard. Wanted us to take a look at it. We're going to end up using the unified model. Sam, you got me in contact with Steve over at the My Advice Architect platform.
Yep.
He walked me through all the Vanguard models. This guy liked Vanguard. He wanted to stick with Vanguard, but he wanted an advisor attached to it. So that's one thing that kind of stuck out to me. It was a perfect match. We brought the assets over, got the right setup, and we're going to move forward with it. So that's one of the success stories here as of late for advisory. I wanted to share.
Awesome. Hey, Mike, do you have anything that we've kind of worked with you, helped you with, that any specifics you could point towards?
Yes, I mean, Sam, you specifically helped me in taking over another advisor's business, and that business model was a direct mutual fund, and that's basically all they did. And so transitioning that, and it's still ongoing, even now, from the direct mutual fund over to the advisory side, you've been a tremendous help, and from the beginning of getting involved there at this business, and then to this day today. So it's not just one case; it's numerous.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, that's the fun of this position, is being involved in many different aspects of your guys' practice. Rob Senior, Rob Junior, any specifics? And again, maybe it was somebody in the back office that really helped you, but any success stories on any business coming in the door where you reached out and were able to deliver some resources for you guys?
I will echo the same thoughts. It's sometimes too numerous to count because we do rely on the back office, both you and Frank, on a daily basis. But one more recent one is being in the business for 33 years. I have some archaic annuities that are sitting out there right now that have remained stagnant and are not addressing at this point in time the financial solution in the manner that would be optimal for the client. We presented a case to you recently with sliding over annuity into another opportunity, and it was seamless. It really was. Me and Rob had an idea, but we weren't exactly sure how to close on it. Wanted to get a little more information on the alternative opportunities for us. As it turns out, this will be a credible difference in the client's income going forward, and something that, again, thankfully, Sam, you brought to our attention. But I really want to echo it. It's really more global. I mean, because it's probably not a day doesn't go by that I'm not in contact either with yourself, Frank, or the back office for some sort of help, whether it's on the technology end, whether it's on the client end, a bookkeeping matter. So again, that's more of a global issue, but specifically for the one. And we do thank you for that one you helped us with just recently.
Yeah, absolutely. How about you, Rob Jr.? Any specific cases where we were able to help drive some business for you guys and get it in the door?
Yeah, I think I'm going to ring the bell of the advanced planning team. I think that that is such an underutilized group. Now, again, they might be sitting here just saying, "Hey, we're getting used just a lot," but it's something that I've been using more and more over the last year or so. Frank and yourself have put me in touch with them many different occasions. They've answered trust cases, trust issues. We had a very, very big whole life insurance case for an estate planning purpose. They want, it was legacy planning, estate planning, and the accountant that we were working with, along with us and the advanced planning team, we all came up with a solution that worked out well for the client. They are tremendous there. And again, I just don't know if enough advisors even realize the breadth of what they can help with. There's lawyers on hand. I mean, CPAs and CFAs, and they are very good at what they do. They'll give you different angles to think of. They gave me questions to go back to our clients with, to gather more information. Yep. So again, I'm going to ring the bell of the advanced planning team. Obviously, I think, you and Frank, it goes without saying how much you guys have done, but that certainly is just a whole nother aspect that I think is just a huge resource.
Yeah, and I'll give you kind of a funny story with that. So a year or so ago, before this whole COVID mess, we had kind of the resources that we have at Cetera come out, our business consulting group. And one of the people we had present was Stan Smiley from the Advanced Planning Group. Now, if you know Stan Smiley, everybody loves Stan. Stan has forgotten more than I will ever learn in my life. But I will tell you, when they're done, everyone goes exactly what you said, Rob, which is, man, I forgot we have those guys all the time. They know everything. And so, again, that kind of leads to working with us to put you in touch with the subject matter experts of certain things, which is, you call them. That group is made up of lawyers and CPAs, and you leave a message. Depending on your question, they'll decide who makes that phone call back to you, and then they'll walk you through those exact kind of questions that you may have. So kind of tapping those resources are really important, which kind of leads to the next question. Other than we have so much going on at Cetera. We have so much in resources that have been coming out over the past couple years. So I will throw that, and I'll start with you, Rob. And Robin is, with AdviceWorks and all these different things that have come out. What resource have you reached out specifically that has really helped you manage your business better than maybe we didn't have a couple years ago?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to ring again. I think I always, I don't want to mess up his last name, but Sean Posnack in the back office. I feel like I talk to him every day about AdviceWorks. I am a huge, huge AdviceWorks user, proponent, advocate, whatever you want to call it. It has made our job, honestly, on a day-to-day basis, smoother, easier, quicker. We've been opening up accounts in 15 minutes, and that is with the signed electronic signature from the client. It is obviously an enormous time saver that Sean has been in direct contact I feel like just the distribution and explaining and education to advisors. So I'm going to ring his bell and just, give him some props. I don't think he gets enough.
No, Sean is great, man. He is our technology trainer / everything. Everybody goes to Sean when you need some stuff. Okay. And how much time, Rob, have you put into learning AdviceWorks? And we're to the point that your opening counts in 15 minutes, which is, if anybody's operations watch this, will be music to their ears when they hear that. How long did it take to get to that point for you?
Well, it's interesting. I feel like I was part of the pilot program that I got to intro AdviceWorks a little bit before it went out to the mass advisor. So a little bit with just some hands-on playing around. Obviously, the back office and the tech team just did a great job with already forward thinking ahead of what issues might arise. Every quarter, they come up with updates. So, whatever I've already learned, I feel like every quarter I'm still learning. So for the advisors out there who haven't used it yet, it's not too late, right? It is going to take you a couple months to really get a hold of it, but within a couple weeks, you can begin opening up accounts. Again, the client wants to do an e-signature. Okay, we had an 87-year-old client do an e-signature. Okay, I promise you, they could do it. With a little positive reinforcement, but it doesn't take as long as some may think. Get on there, play around. You can use me as a resource if you need to as well. I'll throw that out there.
No, and
And think about also, I'm sorry, Sam, just echo his thoughts. Think about the unfortunate situation with the pandemic we have right now. We have much less face-to-face meetings right now. But people don't want to go to the polls. They don't want to leave their house. Having this electronic signature has really facilitated our processes. And by the way, it's very well embraced by the clients right now. They love this. A lot of my clients who are a little more senior, who I thought would have a lot of difficulty navigating through it, have had zero difficulty doing so, and we come over the business much, much quicker this way.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, you think about it. We've had more advisors adopt this type of e-signature because COVID has actually pushed us towards it. You know what I mean? So that's been part of the positive that's come out of this because we see more and more adoption of this stuff. So that is really great feedback. Mike and Joe, any specific resources that you have used, especially that's come out lately, whether it's whatever you might want to talk about, but anything specifically that's helped you guys kind of help drive the business, make you more efficient in your offices. I know you did one of the best things you could do, which is hiring a third person in there to get a lot of that business done, and that takes you to the next level anyways. But any thoughts on those topics?
I go. Yeah, we're jealous that you guys can use the electronic signature. Our clients here in Lancaster County don't want anything to do with that. So we're stuck still doing the paper apps for the majority of our clients. Just this morning I was talking with Frank. He kind of just streamlined the process as far as what fax number to use, what order to put the paperwork in, and that was super helpful. I know we might be a little late to the game, but we kind of just started using the InvestNet and the AdviceWorks platforms. I was doing because I do a lot of past business, so I was doing it through the older system that they had on there. So I'm really seeing what's available in AdviceWorks and on InvestNet to kind of streamline some things. One thing that's stuck out to me was the annual reviews are now electronic.
Yeah.
I think that's a big deal. That's way more efficient than doing the individual paper applications. So that's one thing that I thought of here as of late. And of course, we just hired a guy in the back that's kind of helping us out. And we're trying to learn how to unload work onto him. We're still getting used to that, but so far it's been going well.
Yeah, that's great. And there's another session, which is hiring the right person. And one of my counterparts out in the Chicago area, all he does is preach about getting a CSA and getting the right person in there. Because at the end of the day, all these resources are meant for you guys to do what you do best, which is go talk to the clients. We don't want you worrying about paperwork and all that kind of stuff. We don't want it to be cumbersome for you. We want to just get it done for you so you guys are out there meeting clients.
And I know
It's also a better client experience also.
Absolutely. Joe, what were you going to say?
I was going to say, Tom, we got him in the Learning Center where they have a lot of the training courses for My Advice Architect and all that, because that's kind of where I think I'm going to start taking a lot of my accounts. So I know Frank got him set up in there, and he's, when he has some extra time, he's been going in, watching the videos, doing the interactive courses. So I that's an important resource, for someone that's bringing on a new guy.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm sure next for you guys will be exactly what Rob was talking about earlier, which is setting up some time with Sean to do one-on-one training to make sure, and again, to do a live case, walk you through it and get it done.
Yep.
So I'm sure that'll be coming up for you guys. So when you think about other advisors, they look at all this stuff and they can get overwhelmed pretty quickly. So when you guys are looking at kind of building the plan for 2021 and beyond, do you guys say, hey, we're looking to adopt these certain resources for that year and then work towards that and kind of do a couple every year? Or do you guys try to swallow it? We always use the old analogy, you can only eat how do you eat the elephant? One bite at a time. So do you guys go through planning on what you want to adopt year by year? Rob?
I can help you with that, Sam. Me and Rob always do. I'm being corporate minded. We do a 5-year projection all the time. So we're thinking out 5 years right now, both from a business standpoint, from a resource standpoint, as well as logistically where we're going to be. In fact, we had that conversation this morning. We want to be proactive, not reactive. We're trying to put ourselves in a situation right now where we're anticipating our growth, we're anticipating our business opportunities, anticipating our needs, and now we're starting to further that through obviously resolution purposes. Also from a technology standpoint, we're very fortunate where